So Shrek the Musical is obviously doing brilliantly in London's West End at the moment, and David Lindsay-Abaire, who wrote the screenplay for this movie, wrote that. What for you was the draw of the screenplay?
Just how simple and beautiful the story was. Guillermo del Toro speaks really, I think, eloquently about that there's an earnestness to our film, that the story has a kind of a pure-hearted, there's a pure heart to it. It's about a kid who wants to be loved and believed in, and it sounds simple, and it is. And I just love that. I really did.
And you play Jack Frost. Can you tell us a little bit about where your character is in his life when we first meet him in the movie?
Well, we meet Jack Frost, who is kind of the bringer of mischief, of wintertime mischief and snowball fights and get out of school days. And he's been around for 300 years, traveling and roaming around the earth without a home or a sense of who he is or where he's going or what his purpose is. And he gets called upon by the guardians of childhood, the Sandman, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and the rest, and to fight this evil boogeyman named Pitch, who's instilling fear in the hearts of children and stealing their belief. And I think at the beginning of the film he feels kind of like an outsider who has been left out of the gang, and then the gang's finally calling upon him, and he's a little upset.
Can you tell us a bit more about Pitch, brilliantly voiced by Jude Law, and Jack's kind of relationship with him?
Well, Pitch plays on Jack's. Pitch is the boogeyman. He's the represents everything that goes bump in the night, and the movie's all about belief. And these characters thrive on the belief of children. That's how they live. That's how they breathe. That is their lifeblood. And Pitch is stealing that from them. And Pitch is also a bit of an outsider, and I think it was a great choice on the part of of David and Bill Joyce, who wrote the original books, that Pitch is also has very human and real characteristics. He feels like an outsider, but the way that he gets back at these guys is by fighting back and doing bad things. But he relates to Jack Frost in the sense they both feel like they're outsiders.
And how liberating do you find it as a performer doing this kind of voice work, I guess? When only your voice is going to be used, you can do what you like with your body, I guess.
It's liberating. It's also really hard, and I think the big challenge for me was in the midst of all these really big, fantastical characters and these big voices. They all did such a great job that I didn't want to get lost in the mix. So I think I tried to work with Peter and the rest of the gang about trying to give Jack a couple moments of sincere kind of sadness that he has to deal with, that I think anybody, child or adult, would respond to.
And animation's sort of made quite differently nowadays. Sometimes it's people in isolation, sometimes to get the whole cast together. Did you have any interaction with other cast members?
I wanted to in the beginning. I asked Peter, the director, Peter Ramsey, if I could work with Alec, because I knew Alec was going to be in town at some point, so we got together and in the same room, and it was actually harder doing it that way than it was, it's easier. Your job is to give them as many different choices as possible, so it's actually easier going into a booth with your script and feeding them as many different variations on a line as possible, so when they go and cut it together, they can create a musical score with your voice.
I'm sure you can't tell us too much about Star Trek Into the Darkness. Can you just give us a little flavour of what we can expect?
The story is just bigger in scope and scale, and the IMAX that JJ and company decided to use, I think, for the certain scenes that they chose to use it in, is really will make a huge kind of difference in creating that size. The journeys the characters go on, I think, are even bigger in the beginning. In the first story, in the first installment, rather, it was really about establishing the characters, who they are, the relationships, and now we can kind of explore that in full. So we have a great bad guy, we have a great character-driven story, and we just have just insane action.
I can't wait to see that. Yeah. And congratulations on Rise of the Guardians.
Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.